Next.
Story 4, The Time My Grandma Outsmarted a Scam Artist. I have to tell you about the time my grandma, 82 female, the sweetest little lady you'd ever meet, pulled off a masterclass in outsmarting a scam artist. If you met her, you'd think she was the last person to be able to navigate the world of shady phone calls, but she proved us all wrong in the most hilarious way. One afternoon, my grandma received a call from a guy claiming to be a lawyer. He launched into this dramatic story about how I had been arrested for a DUI and needed $5,000 for bail. Now, my grandma knew better than to take this at face value. After all, I didn't even own a car, and the only thing I was likely to get arrested for was stealing the last piece of pie at family dinners. But being the clever woman she is, she decided to play along instead of hanging up. With a sweet but determined tone, she acted concerned, saying how terrible it was and that she would send the money right away. I could practically picture her scribbling down every detail, her cat, Mr. Whiskers, observing her with a judgmental look as if he knew she was about to pull off something epic. The scammer, probably thinking he had a clueless victim, provided her with all the account information like he was handing over a golden ticket. Feeling quite proud of herself, Grandma wasted no time. She got dressed, put on her best business, a cardigan, and marched her way to the local police station. The way she strutted in, you would have thought she was walking onto the set of a crime drama. When she arrived, she presented them with all the information she had gathered, looking like she had just solved a major case herself. The officers at the station couldn't help but chuckle as she recounted the ridiculous tale of the scammer. Grandma was not only handing over the information but also casually critiquing the scammer's lack of creativity. Honestly, if they're going to try to scam someone, at least make it believable. Who thinks a granddaughter with no car is getting a DUI, she said with a twinkle in her eye. A week later, the police tracked down the scammer and arrested him. The satisfaction Grandma felt was palpable, and I could practically hear her cackling in glee from miles away. But the best part? The police were so impressed with her savvy approach that they invited her back to the station to give a statement. Grandma seized the moment and decided to whip up a batch of her famous cookies to bring along. Can you imagine it? The officers, who had just apprehended a con artist, were treated to a plate of homemade chocolate chip cookies by my grandma, who had single-handedly brought the scammer to justice. She was a local hero. I can picture her there, smiling brightly, telling the officers how they better save her a few cookies for when they needed a snack during their next stakeout. After all of this, my grandma became something of a legend in our family. Whenever anyone brought up scams or scam calls, I could see her puffing up with pride, eager to share her story. She would casually remind everyone that if a scammer ever tried to mess with her again, they'd better be ready for a fight. She had cookies and a police department behind her. It taught me a valuable lesson: never underestimate the power of a sweet old lady with a sharp mind and a batch of cookies. Grandma proved that you don't have to be tech-savvy or young to outsmart a scammer. All it takes is a little cunning and a lot of sass. Now, every time my phone rings, I can't help but think about how my grandma would handle it. And honestly, I hope one day I can channel her inner savagery when the moment calls for it.
Story 5. My roommate's pet parrot ruined my date, and I got revenge. Hi, my name is Paul, 23 male. Started sharing an apartment with an acquaintance, college mate Jake, 24 male. Living with Jake was always an adventure, but not the kind you'd hope for when you sign a lease with a buddy. He had this obnoxious pet parrot named Chirpy, and let me tell you, that bird was the ultimate gossip. Chirpy had a talent for picking up phrases, and not just any phrases, he was a pro at repeating the most embarrassing ones. I had learned to accept that my life would never be the same with that feathered fiend around, but things took a turn one fateful night that changed everything. One evening, I finally managed to secure a date with a girl I had been crushing on for ages. Let's call her Emily. We had hit it off at a party a week earlier, and I was stoked to have her over. I set the scene perfectly. The lights were dimmed, some soft music played in the background, and I even bought snacks to impress her. I felt like a smooth operator, ready to win her over. Things started out great. We settled down on the couch, talking and laughing as if the world outside didn't exist. But then, out of nowhere, Chirpy decided to join the party. He had been quiet until that moment, like he was waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Suddenly, he screeched at the top of his little lungs, "Paul doesn't wash his hands after the bathroom." My heart sank as Emily's face contorted in horror. I felt like the ground had opened up beneath me and I was free-falling into the depths of embarrassment. I shot a panicked glance at Chirpy, who seemed to be enjoying his moment of glory far too much. Emily looked at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. I wanted to crawl under the couch and hide. Instead, she quickly made an excuse about needing to get home, leaving me with a mix of rage and humiliation. After she left, I confronted Jake, but he was doubled over in laughter, completely unbothered by the chaos Chirpy had caused. It was infuriating. I knew I had to get back at both of them for ruining what could have been a great night. I began plotting my revenge, and I decided the best way to do it was to turn Chirpy against Jake. While Jake was at work, I set to work training Chirpy, armed with a list of embarrassing phrases that would make even the toughest guy cringe. Each day, I would come home and teach Chirpy a new phrase. It was a secret mission, and I was loving every minute of it. Jake eats his boogers was a personal favorite, along with Jake wears SpongeBob underwear. I could already picture the look on Jake's face when Chirpy would unleash these gems. A week later, the stars aligned perfectly. Jake decided to throw a get-together with a few friends, completely unaware of the trap I had set. I waited with bated breath, hiding in my room and listening to the laughter echoing through our apartment. I felt like a mastermind as I peeked out to see Jake surrounded by his buddies, showing off his cool parrot. Then it happened. Chirpy, fueled by the energy of the party and my brilliant training, began to mimic the phrases I had taught him. The room fell silent for a moment as he squawked, "Jake eats his boogers." The stunned silence was quickly followed by a roar of laughter. Jake's face turned crimson as he tried to maintain some semblance of composure, but it was too late. Chirpy was just getting started. "Jake wears SpongeBob underwear," chirped the parrot next, and Jake was officially mortified. I could barely contain my laughter from my hiding spot as his friends were in stitches, pointing and teasing him. The embarrassment was palpable, and I reveled in every second of it. Justice had finally been served, and it felt glorious. Jake's friends continued to egg Chirpy on, and each new phrase was met with uproarious laughter, cementing Chirpy's reputation as the life of the party at least for that night. Jake could hardly show his face after the onslaught of humiliation, and I relished in the moment. Watching him squirm was the sweetest payback for all the times he made me feel like a fool. From that day on, Chirpy became a local legend among our friends. Jake learned the hard way that living with a parrot trained for revenge could be a slippery slope. The best part, Chirpy still repeats those embarrassing phrases to this day. Whenever I walk into the room, I'm greeted by the familiar squawking, and it never fails to crack me up. In the end, I didn't just get my revenge. I taught Jake a lesson about respecting personal space and boundaries, especially when it comes to living with someone. Plus, I became a bit of a hero among my friends, known as the mastermind who outsmarted not one, but two nuisances in one fell swoop. I can't wait for the next date, hopefully. I'll remember to keep Chirpy entertained before they arrive. The end.